Welcome everybody to our latest rendition of Investigatio Sapientiae. We even changed up the squares this time, so on your top right, you have your co-host, Zachary Ellis. In the bottom right corner, we have his lovely wife, Juliann Ellis. And we are all so excited to be here today. We are going to get right into this. Juliann, why don't you tell us a little about yourself? Where did you grow up? And did you like that location?
So I grew up in Cache Valley, Utah, and I did love the location. We grew up next to a big field, so we had a lot of space to just be free and roam and kind of explore the world. And it was a good mixture between like a little bit of city, but a little bit of country. The town is pretty relatively small, but there's, shopping and there's stuff that's really close by. So I really loved where I grew up, except for the winters. Winters get terrible in Cache Valley. So, but yeah, for the most part, it's been a really good place to live. I'm still here, so I can't hate it
Yeah,
that much, right?
yeah. I mean, I'm still here, and I much prefer the warm weather down south.
Me too.
What was it like meeting Zach? Because for me, meeting Zach was probably a top 10 moment in my life. So let's see how you top that. Because I just met him playing baseball. So what was that like for
Oh my
you?
gosh. Yes. So I actually met Zach when I was serving as a missionary for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Mexico. So that's like a really weird place to meet the person that you're going to marry, I felt like. But yeah, we met down in Mexico and what it was like me. Um it was great. I mean, we were both headed to a new area when we first met. So we were in this car. There were six of us, so two members of our ward of the place where we were headed. They came to pick us up and they drove us all the way there. And Zach was with his companion, I was with my companion, and we just talked the whole way there. It was great. I mean, I don't know. He left a pretty good impression on me, I'd say.
That's good. I mean, we've come
Yeah.
this far, so uh, well. So, Jules, as far as like, I don't know, I want to talk a little bit more about like your growing up here in Cache Valley. I do appreciate the kind words. I hope that it was thoroughly a good time getting to know me, both of you. It's two of my strongest relationships right here, so that's always good. But so as far as like where you grew up, you mentioned about Cache Valley, how you grew up here. So you said it's got a little bit of country, a little bit of city. When you were little, would you have preferred more country or more city? And now, would you prefer more country or more city?
It's a great question. When I was younger, definitely preferred more country. I mean, the place where I grew up, we did have a lot of space. We had a relatively big house, big property. Um, and then my grandparents on my dad's side, they had a lot of property. They had a cabin up kind of in the middle of nowhere where we could just ride horses and explore and hang out in the middle of literally nowhere. And then their property, same thing. They just had tons of land. They had horses, they had chickens, they had a big old field, they had a big backyard, a river running through it on one end, and then a canal on the other end, an apple orchard. Like it was just an empire to a child. It was really a big space, and I loved it. So I think there's part of that that has stuck with me. I definitely like space and I like being outside. I like to feel like I have room to explore and roam and I really do enjoy being outside. So I would probably say at this point, there is a part of me that wants to explore more of a city type life, but I don't think I would stay long. I think I would definitely return to somewhere where I had space and, you know, maybe a little bit of distance between me and my neighbors. Probably that would be the most ideal thing for the future.
Awesome.
These are loaded questions because I already know the answers to most of these. but it serves the purpose of asking just so that people can get to know you a little bit better and who you are. So,
Oh,
Personally, I go to New York for 2 days and I'm exhausted. I'm like, I don't know how people stay there the entire time.
oh yes. City driving is a headache. That's one thing that I never enjoy when we travel to a big city.
Yeah.
and like Jesse, for you, you grew up in Houston, and then your grandparents. Well, actually, I don't know if it's your grandparents directly, but the cabin up in Idaho that they have, um, like, was that always exciting for you to get to go to, or was that just kind of like, it's a place we go there, or like, do you guys get
Yeah.
excited about it? Like, are you stoked to have a cabin to go spend time at?
Yeah, no, definitely so it's, I believe, Kim's great grandparents or her grandparents that built the cabin up there in Island Park. And their family has gone there for generations now. And it's always I wouldn't say it's a fight, but everyone's always trying to book times to go up to the cabin. I've enjoyed most every time I've gone there. I prefer. I haven't gone there too often in the winter, to be honest. So I haven't done like the snowmobiling as much in that neck of the woods. But we have 4-wheelers that we take, and there were some like gravel pits you could go like just kind of climb up the hills and come back down, and like different trails and stuff. So that was always fun for me, and definitely a different pace from just your normal suburban lifestyle.
Yeah.
So it reminds me of this story that we would read in my Latin class about the country mouse and the city mouse, and the city mouse comes out and hangs out with the country mouse, and he's like, "Why are we eating this? I can eat all the good stuff from the people in the city." I was like, "Well, this is what I have, and I'm happy to give it to you. If you need anything else, just let me know." And he's just like super happy and friendly the whole time. And I don't remember if it was Ovid who wrote it, but he was a poet that had lived in the city of Rome, and he was like, "Take me to my villa. I don't want to be around these people. Just I want to relax. Get me out of here."
Yeah.
So I think I vibe more with that than the everyday city lifestyle.
Yeah, that's fair. Same.
Yeah. But along with growing up, we've heard from a lot of different people about growing up in Utah, and I kind of want to go more into like your personal religious history. Like when it comes to you and religion, what was like your first like big moment that you wanted to be religious, or like a big spiritual moment that made you feel attached to all this, leading up to you going on a mission and all that?
That's a really good question. I always have had more of a like stronger spiritual side to myself. I think that's something that I identified with really young, like really early on in my life. And it always just came really naturally to me. Prayer, you know, meditating, thinking about things, listening, kind of like following what I feel, things like that. Um, both my parents are very religious, very, very religious, and they are very dedicated to their religion and their beliefs. And I think with that kind of guiding me, it just felt really natural. Like it felt natural for me just to kind of like go along with that and, kind of follow in some ways, follow in their footsteps. So I don't know. I think it's kind of hard to pinpoint exactly one moment where I think I found dedication. It just kind of was a gradual build up, you know, kind of like slowly over time. I don't know. I think when I was young it just always came really naturally for me. I've always loved it. I mean, I think the moments where I've tried to explore another side of life, like a life without religion, or when I've dipped into like things that, cause disbelief. Those kind of things I just live a very sad, dark life during that time. So I just have to say, like, yeah, that probably would be the best way I could answer that, is just it was kind of like a gradual progression. I mean, the moment when I knew I wanted to serve a mission, that was kind of a big moment. I mean, I definitely could say that there were several bigger moments over the years that definitely kept me really strong on the path of religion and staying in religion. But I don't know. I would just say, like, yeah, more than anything, it's just been kind of a gradual buildup for me.
Okay. Just like putting away little rocks of testimony until you have like a bigger mound to push you forward after that.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. On the flip side, was there ever a moment that was like really hard for you to get over? Did you maybe have a question that you didn't feel was answered adequately? How did you kind of deal with that doubt, and what helped you overcome that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I actually have, there's several members of my family that aren't religious. They were growing up and they were, raised that way, but they aren't anymore. And two of them are literally right on either side of me in the line of kids in my family. So there's 6 kids. I'm the second. So the oldest and then the third oldest. Those two, um, they chose a different way. And I never really had like a specific question. I mean, I would say that when that kind of happened and both of them kind of, it wasn't at the same time, but it was around the same years when both of them kind of stepped away and that happened, that would have been my biggest, like the most difficult moment for me spiritually, because I trusted them. I was so close to them. I mean, not that I'm not now, but I think people that I knew so well who had grown up the same way as me, all of a sudden I was like, is something wrong with me? Like, am I doing something wrong? Is there something I'm not saying? Is there something that I'm not understanding? Because these people who I know so well, have just chosen a different path. So that was kind of like the biggest moment spiritually for me, where I was like, I had to check myself. I had to explore some things. I had to kind of step away. I had to, some different things like that. And I would say more than anything, that was really good for me, because it, I don't know, it definitely showed me that I am not a very happy, nice, friendly person without religion in my life. So I think in the long run, it was really good for me just, to do that. But yeah, definitely that would have been, I don't know, the biggest moment in my life where I was like, what is going on?
Yeah, yeah. I
Zach can
mean,
attest to that. He saw the whole thing happen.
yeah, we got through it. It was rough. I definitely can saw those things, and like you're saying, it was a hard time. It definitely was. So, um, yeah, I can just add my testimony to that. That I saw that was definitely one of your hardest times. Um, as far as this is like kind of a side question that's been dragging throughout, well, all of these interviews that we've done. We talk about young men and young women's because so far there's been like a theme arising that people feel like for whatever reason the young woman or young men organization didn't quite teach them the right things, or they were focused on other things, or um I'm just curious if you have any thoughts or feelings like that too. Like, was your time in young women's enjoyable and you thoroughly had a good time? Were your leaders like trying to push your spiritual growth over pushing, like, as one of our guests talked about, kind of talking about just more being a mom, focus on being a mom? And so I'm just curious if you want to share anything about that with young women's, if you noticed or felt anything like that where it was like, oh yeah, this is kind of frustrating, or no, I had a good time, my leaders were focused on the right things, or just whatever thoughts you have about young women's.
Oh my gosh, this is bringing up a lot of different thoughts for sure. Um, I have to say, overall, my experience in Young Women's was like a 10 out of 10. Like, I loved it. There were definitely some years where actually one of my really good friends that was in Young Women's with me, we would like try and slough or get out of things here or there. Not because they weren't doing a great job, but I think just because we I think it was more because we were just like rebellious teenagers needing to like let out some steam and not go with the flow sometimes. But I also have to say
Hmm.
my young women leaders were, even though they were all from the United States, born and raised in the US, and most of them grew up in the religion, there was a lot of diversity in my young women leaders. You know, I had some that were extremely strict. I had others that were kind of like middle of the line, and then some that were kind of more withdrawn from like the, you know, letter of the law, type living. And I think that really allowed me to kind of like notice that I could pick anywhere I wanted to, I got to choose kind of how I lived out my religion. And I'm not saying that, commandments shouldn't be obeyed or things like that, but I think that for me, I was really lucky that way because I mean, I remember one of my young women leaders, I will never forget this. Like, we were once talking about like boys in young women's, right? And kissing boys. And I had one young woman leader that was just like, you just have to kiss them all. Like, just kiss them all. And I remember I was just like, like, comments and things like that would come up. And it would just kind of make you realize, I don't know, I personally had a really great experience. I do think it was really geared towards becoming a homemaker and not so much career driven focus. I mean, the personal progress book that they have the young women work through is like learning to cook, learning to clean, learning to do service, learning to work with kids, and there is some room for growth or like room there for like choosing a different type of project, but the ones that are all offered up all kind of revolve around that. So, but lucky for me, it was also something that I always loved was being motherly, homemaking. I always
Hmm.
really liked that stuff anyway. If I didn't, I think I would have had a lot, more difficult time in young women's.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was a lot of detail there, but
No,
hopefully
Oh,
no,
that
that was
that's
good.
that was great. That was exactly what I was, like hoping to hear a well thought out answer that involves a lot of components. And just to touch on that, I kind of want to say I think I get what you're trying to say. I'm going to say what I thought you were trying to say, and you can confirm with me if that was what you meant or not. When you were talking about like some that lived letter of the law, some that didn't, some that lived very much not the way, when you mentioned that, you were like, well, I don't mean to say that you can't be obedient. I think what you meant, what you were trying to say is that the church community welcomes all, no matter your level of pushing to be better. At least in your ward, it was this way, where like it didn't matter if they were completely letter of the law type people or not. Everyone was welcome to join in on the ward activities and be part of the ward family. And so that didn't deter you from being like, oh, this church is going to push me out if I don't live letter of the law. Like that's what I think you were trying to say. So I don't know. Confirm with me if that is. If not, then please correct me.
yeah, definitely. I think too, like I grew up in a really religious, strict home, like very religious, strict, and a lot of things that weren't necessarily written commandments or like you should or should not do this were made to be commandments. Like we couldn't say words like crap or shut up or stupid. Like those were like swear words in our home growing up. Like
Oh,
no
that's
joke.
stupid.
Yeah, I know. So, like, when I kind of got out into the world and I realized that that was so, like, nonchalant for people, that was really kind of, I was like, what is going on? So, I don't know. I think, yeah, kind of what I meant by that is like, I think they were all, and they still are all really good people. Every single young woman leader I had, I could say so many good things about them, so many good things they taught me, they showed me, they weren't afraid to show us their flaws, and that made us feel more comfortable being imperfect, so I cannot say enough good things about them. I think they're just, all of them are amazing. But yeah, I appreciated their honesty with me and their transparency and just being who they were, because I think you're right. Like a lot of young women leaders kind of feel a lot of pressure to be like best example and to, not say anything that they ever did wrong or, to just push whatever the church is saying. But I don't know. I had a really great experience with my leaders.
I wish I learned more about cooking. I had baseball at the same time that Scouts was going on, so I didn't even learn how to cook on a campfire like a lot of the Scouts did. So I have learned how to scavenge for food that others have prepared for me.
That's a good skill. That
Yes.
matters.
Yes. I can carry that with me just about anywhere in the world.
True.
So with that atmosphere in your young woman's life, being able to see that people live on a scale of religiosity, that has allowed you to kind of move through your life being like, it's okay if I'm not pushing everything, even for myself, but let alone pushing it on other people as well. Like, I need to just focus on doing what's right and being healthy while I'm doing it.
Definitely. I think there's definitely been moments where I've tried to push too much on myself. Zach is actually a really good kind of like what do you call it? Like a
Counterbalance.
detector. He's like, you're overloading yourself now, or you're trying to do too much, or slow it down, enjoy the journey. He's really good at that. So I would say I think I learned really good lessons from my leaders, from my young women experience, that it's a journey and it's a process, and you don't have to get it all right the first time, but you just keep trying and you keep working. And yeah, and then Zach every once in a while will just be like, hey, take it easy, we can slow it down a little.
Nice. And you can kind of look at that in a switch of topic. When you learned how to play tennis, you might have had some coaches that were very classicist in their way of teaching you, or some that were kind of new school. For me, this is the only tennis player that matters. Occasionally Serena, but mostly Roger.
For me, it's Rafael Nadal, but we won't get into a heated debate about who's better. The point is, they're both goats. They're both up there in the top players of all time. They're very entertaining to watch.
We can split them into right-handed versus left-handed, and then we'll call it.
Yeah,
call
exactly. Exactly. There we go. That's better.
But what, I guess, drew you to tennis? What makes tennis special to you?
I think the first thing that made tennis special was my big brother taught me. I always looked up to him, and I've never been able to beat him at anything at all. So tennis was kind of like, all right, I'm going to get better than you. I'm going to learn to beat you at your own game. It was kind of like a new challenge, something I could do with someone that I really loved and loved to be with. And then after that, it was just like, there's a really great tennis community in the Valley. I mean, there's a tennis and racket club. I met a lot of people there. The tennis team was great. Everyone was really friendly. Like, we didn't have team drama ever. So I think tennis just always was 100% like positive. Well, not always. I definitely had my bad days where I just wanted to like chuck my racket across the court or smash it or something. But overall, I think it was that. Like, it was just always a positive place I could come. If I needed to work some anger out, I could just smash the ball. Like, so. And it's also really athletic, which I really like being athletic, and it's just got a little bit of everything. Oh, and one of the best parts about this sport is it is an old person sport, so you can play it like your whole life. So it feels like a good investment,
For sure.
What part of like the competition drew you to the sport? Like you mentioned all the reasons, like as far as like it keeps you healthy, it's athletic, it's competitive, it's an old person sport that can be played for a while. But like the actual competition on the court, when you step on the court and you're facing someone, whether it was in high school when you were facing opponents or now when you kick my butt all over the court, like what about that competition draws you to the sport itself? Like for me with baseball, it's like trying to out pitch the batter, try to prove that I'm the better pitcher than the batter. But like in tennis, is it about showing that you have a stronger forehand, a stronger backhand, you're better at a drop shot? Like, I guess like those are some ideas. There could be a bunch of other ideas, but like, what is it for you that's the competitiveness that you love about tennis?
I would have to say tennis is really tricky because it takes a lot of really fine motor skills, lots of like subtle changes in the, way you're holding your racket or the way you hit the ball or kind of where your body's movement is headed. All of those things can drastically change where the ball ends up. And when you're playing against somebody else, the goal is always, I don't know, not always, but it, I think the best feeling in tennis is when you hit a winner. So that's like when you find an open spot on the court, when you find a place that they will never be able to get to, you hit the ball there in the perfect way, and you outright, like 100% won that point. Like that was your point. So I think that there's part of that that's like really an addictive feeling when you do it. Like you're just like, man, like I am boss. Like it just feels really good.
Yeah.
Um, so I would have to say, as far as the competition goes, I don't know. I think it's more that than anything else. Like I've never really had a lot of like competitiveness in me except towards my older brother. But other than that, it just feels really good to like see yourself improving and getting good at something. And I don't know, the perfect drop shot, all those things. It just is a really satisfying feeling.
It's true. I mean, I've played against you enough times to know that one of the most deadly parts of your game that I don't think you take into consideration much is your serve. Like you are crazy good at that. But we don't need to get into all that right now. It's crazy good though. The way that you put power, it lands in the service court and it's got spin on it all at the same time are things that I cannot do. And take training, like you say, to fine tune those motor skills.
Thanks.
I think part of my personal problem with tennis is I started playing at a point in my life where I did not have great self control, and there's definitely a mental aspect to tennis, like there is with golf, that
Yes.
took me decades to really handle and get a hold
Yeah,
of.
that's fair.
That is definitely true. It's a very mental game. There's actually a book that I tell all of the people that I have coached to read, and it's called The Inner Game of Tennis, and it's literally just how to control your anger, your frustration with yourself, your frustration at the other person. The whole game is so filled with, it's definitely got a very strong mental aspect.
Like,
So,
go ahead.
okay, I was just gonna say, so like when you were coaching, we've had this conversation before, but I think it's interesting. When you were coaching, what was like what was the difference between practice Juliann and game Juliann when you were coaching? Like what would you tell your athletes in practice versus what you would tell them in the middle of a game, you know?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, as far as like coaching girls during matches, I did that twice. I was an assistant coach 1 year and then I did head coaching the second year. And practicing was all about like fine tuning things. So switch this up, do this, And if I knew that it took a small tweak just to like fix something up, if I knew someone's game well enough, then during a match, I would comment on that. But other than that, I would almost make no adjustments when they were in the middle of a match to their form, their, swing, anything like that. Like during a match, it was mostly just like that. It was mental. It was like helping them get out of their heads, helping them get excited. Some of those matches go so, so long. So it's not only like physically taxing, but like to keep on digging yourself out of, okay, I lost that point or oh, that was a bad shot. Like you really have to be on top of your mental game. So matches, most of the time, it's just mental stuff. At least that's what I would do. And then during practice, it was whatever. I mean, I don't know. Like during practice, when I was coaching, like just doing lessons, I would take the liberty at any time of the year to switch up a swing, switch up a stroke. That takes time to kind of master. But during this tennis season, I would be careful about that, just because how much it can throw off somebody's game. So I don't know. Hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew baseball players who would try to adjust their swing mid-season, and then they'd be striking out against the pitching machine. It's like,
Oh yeah.
maybe just stick to what was at least getting you on base before. Don't worry about hitting the home runs.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, all these things can kind of relate to a topic you wanted to get into. You wanted to call it like reigning with righteousness, and you said a lot of it comes from this verse that you had read in Mormon. But I did but I did remain among them, but I was forbidden to preach unto them because of the hardness of their hearts, and because of the hardness of their hearts the land was cursed for their sake. So what about this verse led you into thinking about reigning in righteousness?
So it actually wasn't that verse. Let me see.
All right.
Sorry. This is like, what is this?
Yeah.
So the verse that it was, sorry, let me get it pulled up here. You're probably like, how does this relate?
I was like, if I really wanted to, I could maybe extrapolate that into something with reigning with righteousness, but
Takes you back to like missionary training.
I trusted you. That's what I did my part.
Hey, that feels
all
good.
good.
Yeah.
It feels good to know that you trust me. Okay, so let me tell you the verse. Sorry, I actually just saw too that I did type that when I messaged you. Okay, so it was not that, it was about King Benjamin. So it was when they were talking about King Benjamin, who reigned with righteousness. And he was an amazing man. Like it was Words of Mormon. Words of Mormon. Oh yeah, Words of Mormon. I did type that. All right.
No.
It's all good. Anyways, so we can pull that one up. It's Words of Mormon, and then same 117. There it is. Okay. Do you want me to read it?
If you want to read it for it, yeah, go for it.
Okay. For behold, King Benjamin was a holy man, and he did reign over his people in righteousness, and there were many holy men in the land, and they did speak the word of God with power and with authority, and they did use much sharpness because of the stiff-neckedness of the people. So this was actually something that came up during our Come Follow Me study this year. When I read this, that phrase like really stuck in my brain. Reign in righteousness. It's something that I feel like I've heard a lot. As being a member of the church, you hear it every once in a while in like a conference talk, or other places in the scriptures. It says it in the Bible a lot, and I don't know, it just like kind of got me thinking about what that means. What it means to be like a leader in the church and reign with righteousness, what it means to be like a political leader reigning with righteousness. Kind of like where my mindset went with it more was like reigning in righteousness, like in a family, and kind of what that would look like for a parent to a child relationship.
So, because I feel like I get where you're coming from. You and I have obviously had this talk multiple times where we've questioned a lot about how we want to raise kids, And so I think that that's a little bit of where you're coming from with this reign with righteousness. So my question is, if you were thinking about this in a family aspect, like the end of that verse says, and they did use much sharpness because of the stiff-neckedness of the people. Kids are going to be stiff-necked because they just are. They're going to do things because they want to do them, because they want to deny you, things like that. I guess my question to you is like, where's the line? Like where do you use that sharpness and where don't you, that you've considered, I guess? Because like, do any of us really have the right answer? Maybe not. Plus, also, doesn't it depend on each child? It's not going to be the same answer for every child. But like, as general of an answer as you could give, what do you think about using sharpness to to teach your children?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, I think in terms of that, I also had a lot of questions, a lot of things I wasn't sure about. As far as that specifically goes, I think discipline is a good thing. I think discipline in the right way can, you know, bring out really good results and help point people in the right direction. I mean, if you just had a child and let them run, wild and crazy, do whatever they want, no discipline, like of course there's a level of that needs to be there to teach people, you know, to teach kids
Mhm.
what's right, what's wrong. Um, but I don't know. I mean, every time I think about discipline and like how far would be an appropriate, length to take discipline, I always remember the story of Christ when the people in the temple were selling things. Was it on the Sabbath? I don't remember if it was on the Sabbath, but he got really angry and he like flipped some tables over or something and yelled at people and, kind of reprimanded them really strongly. And I always think about, because before I was like, oh, I can never get angry. I have to always suppress my anger. I have to be like just submissive and calm about everything. But I think when it really matters, when it's something that's really important, those are definitely moments to kind of like speak up and make something known. But I don't know, I also kind of feel like this is a topic that I was interested to see what both of you would say too, because I've thought a lot about it and I've had a lot of different thoughts come, and I definitely don't feel like I could write a book about it right now, but hopefully one day I'd have some good ideas.
Yeah, I think they kind of like what you're talking about with not needing to suppress your anger. Like it brought me to the thought of like when my parents would discipline me and my like brothers and sisters, it was always they were always mad. They would get mad. They would not necessarily yell, but they would very strongly say, you're grounded. Go to your room, whatever. Um, and so, but I was thinking about that silver bullet that my dad kept in his holster until I did something really stupid. The day I wrecked his car, he pulled the "I'm not even mad. I'm just disappointed." And so I wonder, like, is that like a one-time use card, or is that like a better way to go about it? I don't know. I was just thinking about it when you were talking about how sometimes you do need to get mad and try and like lay down the law, but also show a ton of love. I always think about the scripture that you and I have talked about a ton in DNC, where it says, after reprimanding, to show greater love towards he who thou hast reprimanded. And so that's always one of my things is like, yes, you do need to be strong and direct with people, especially if you're directly over them. But at some point, after you've been direct with them, after you've reprimanded them, then show the love that you have for them. Show greater love than the reprimandation was worth on its own. Show that you love them more than you were ever mad at them. And so that's one of the things that I always come back to when I think about raising kids, is that I need to be willing to, if it is a situation that I need to reprimand someone, do it and don't waver on it, but then also to not wait too long before showing that love.
Yep, I pull it up for you.
There it is.
This is all talking about how you should behave when you have authority. And this can be given talking about political leaders or leaders in the church, and focusing on using persuasion, long-suffering, gentleness, meekness. But every once in a while, there does come a time when sharpness is necessary, and that should be used when you're moved upon by the Holy Ghost. Not every person you talk to is going to respond to the same types of discipline. Not each one of my siblings was necessarily raised the same way. There were times where, I had to get grounded for being stupid, but if my little sister did the same thing, it was more of like you just need to understand that this has consequences and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And there's another scripture. Go ahead.
I was just going to say real quick on that, that I think that that's kind of why it's so hard, because then your kids start asking you, but why didn't she get the same punishment, you know? So,
Yeah.
anyways, continue though.
Because she's younger, she doesn't understand. Yeah, but I used to be that same age.
What was the other scripture?
The other
you were gonna
scriptures
go
in
to?
Revelations. It's like maybe chapter 1, but it talks about how the Lord will chastise who he loves.
Mm-hmm.
And recognizing that there's a love on the other side of it definitely helps understand. It's like, okay, I know they were mad, but the whole purpose of this is so that I can be better, that I can be safe, and they do still love me on behind all of whatever just happened.
Yeah.
So it's on either side, you know, the person who's reigning and the person who's being reigned over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really to think about like with King Benjamin's example. Like you can think about okay, you guys are going to have to help me remember the whole story, but he had sons, right? And I'm trying to remember the story, or maybe I'm thinking of Mosiah. Remember Mosiah's sons? He was no longer going to be the king, and he had asked his sons, hey, do you want to be the king? And the first one was like, no, I don't want to do that. The second was like, same thing, don't want to do that. None of them wanted to do that. And he was like, I mean, I could see a parent in that case. Like, let's say I had like this big business or something, and I just wanted to hand this down to one of my kids, but none of them would take it. I could, definitely see a parent being angry about that, or being like, why aren't you taking this? Like, this is a big deal. This is something that I really wanted for you, and I really wanted your life to go this way. But I like that example a lot, because he just kind of, like, of course it made him sad, and he wasn't afraid to make that known, that this makes me sad, that no one wants to continue this. But he kind of also supported them in going out and being missionaries and doing kind of what their heart was calling them to do. So that's something that comes to my mind a lot when I think about reigning in righteousness. Is it's really selfish a lot of times, I think, for parents or someone to feel like they know what's best for you and to push it on you, instead of giving people space to discover their own journey. And I mean, I definitely have had a lot of like parent like feelings towards my younger siblings. I spent a lot of time with them and babysat them all the time, took care of them, carpooled, all sorts of stuff. And there definitely have been moments over the years where I'm like, you're doing it wrong. Like, you need to be doing this. You're not doing that. Like, you need to, shape up or whatever. And those always drove a wedge between us in our relationship. It never helped us feel closer. And then they felt like they had to hide things from me or lie to me about, what was really going on. And I think when I got back from my mission, I was like pushing pretty hard, especially on my younger sister, the one that's just younger than me. And our relationship just got really bad, like really, really bad. So I don't know. I think once I kind of like backed off and just, gave her some space, it took us maybe 2 or 3 years, but now I think I definitely learned from that error. Like, it's just not good to try and like force people to do what you think they should do, because she's so happy doing what she wants and being who she wants to be. And, what more could I want for somebody that I love?
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, if you believe something so strongly and you just think that someone else should do it, like, where would you draw the line between saying, like, where do you push until when do you push? Or, you know,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was going to say, I think that part of what you're talking about right now is that kind of going to what Jesse was saying too, is recognizing where you have power. where you are supposed to be reigning. You know, with siblings, maybe that's not so much your role as it is your parents, versus your kids, you know, like that's your job. You're supposed to teach them until they can start making decisions on their own. But if it's like a friend, an acquaintance, a sibling, and you have something for them that you want to share that you think would make their lives better, like the gospel, I think a friendly invitation can go a long ways, but to always respect the boundary, to say, hey, you know, like I don't want to push any boundaries, I don't want to make you uncomfortable, but I really love this church and I love what I'm doing and I feel really good and fulfilled in my life, and I just want to invite you because I think you know, you might enjoy it too. And if they say sorry, I really don't care about that, you know, whatever, then respectfully resign from that conversation and say it's all good. We're still friends though, you know, you want to hang out next weekend, and just let it be, let it die. Because once you start pushing that limit, in my opinion, you might start losing friends, hurting their feelings, them thinking that you think you're better than them. So
Yeah, and we all have like these scales we hear about. We usually hear it in terms of revelation, but ruling and revelation is typically hand in hand. So like I'm in control of myself first. Like I can receive revelation for myself. I am in control of myself. And then if I were married, no, as a team, we're in charge of the family. And then if I were a bishop, then I'm over the ward, and I need to make sure everyone's taken care of, is the best way to put it. And then the stake president, and then on till you hit the president of the church. And we have political versions of that, you know, the mayor's over the city, and then your district, all that good stuff, all the way up to the president or king, wherever you may be.
Yeah. Are you gonna transition yet, or do you have more to say on this?
I was just gonna say that
Keep going.
among that is, once I get to recognizing those points, is I'm not gonna go say, Zach, you're not doing what I'm doing, and that's not okay. I don't get to say that. What I do get to say is, like, you know, positive things. You know, if it's affecting me, I might say, hey, Zach, could you not do that? It's really bringing me down. Mm-hmm. But if it's something that you want to do, you're free to do that. I might advise, these are some consequences if you keep doing that thing. These are some positive things you can do instead of that. And focusing on choices rather than I'm telling you what is right, what is wrong, and you don't have a choice. Listen to me blindly if you have to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. This is like a sidestep because we were talking about this earlier, and I just wanted to like circle back to this real quick. As the viewers at home have probably noticed, our dog is walking around behind Juliann every once in a while. She pops into frame. So this is kind of what I was thinking about, because you and I, Juliann, we've talked about this. And this is something that I had to learn when we first got Isla. I would get home and see that she had just trashed all of our garbages. You know, she'd knocked them all over and torn the whole house apart, all the garbages. She would never chew on wires because we taught her that, you know, like we taught her some really good things, but garbages were always fair game in her mind. So she would just destroy them. She would just destroy them. And so I would get home and I would be so mad because I just got home from a long day of work, and I would chastise her, you know, I would spank her on the butt and take her outside or something and clean up the mess. And it took me a while to realize, one, that doesn't work for dogs. Unless you chastise them as they're making the mistake, they don't understand. They can't put two and two together. They don't know why you're mad. They just think you came home and you're mad. It has nothing to do with the garbages. Mm-hmm. But the other thing that I learned through this process with Juliann is that you shouldn't be mad for your own failure, if that makes sense. I failed to teach my dog to not tear apart the garbage can, and I'm paying for that mistake. So why should I be mad at her for that? So that's something that I think of when I think of kids, is like, if my kid, I don't know, drinks alcohol at a friend's house when he's like 14 years old, and we never really talked about alcohol, then like, am I allowed to even be mad? No. You know, like obviously in our religion, it will have been brought up well before then. But I think that like things like that, if you aren't teaching them responsibly beforehand, then you have no room to be mad because it was your own failure. You failed to do something. And so that's just kind of one of those side steps that I wanted to go into was you need to worry about teaching them with love and respect and guidance before you can ever be mad about anything. So that's what I wanted to bring up.
Reminds me of another Latin thing we did in school. We read a really old play by Terence. Granted, they're all really old, but this is old even to the Romans. And it's called Adelphoi, so it's probably a ripoff of a Greek play. The idea is there was a man who had two sons, and he had a brother, and he lets one of his sons be adopted by the brother, and they're brought up according to each father's philosophy. The first father was extremely strict, like would whip his kid if he did something wrong and would yell at him all the time. The other one was completely lax, gave him all the money he needed to do whatever he wanted. His only like requirement was just let me know if something ever happens, and so we can take care of it. Mm-hmm. And there's a bunch of comedic things. The one son steals a prostitute for the other son and beats up the pimp, and it's a whole scandal in the town. But then his next door neighbor was pregnant, and everyone was worried that he was stealing the prostitute for himself. And then
these boys were wild.
Yeah, they were super wild. In the end, both sons ended up making quite grave mistakes, and neither tactic of parenting was effective. You can't be 100% strict or 100% lax. There needs to be a balance, which I'm coming to learn is just about everything has some sort of balance. There's very little room where you can go 100% one direction, or not the other.
Yeah, definitely.
But now we can move on to...
Let me, real quick, before we move on, is there anything else that you wanted to talk about, Juliann? Because that was like your segment about it. Is there more that you wanted to dive into?
No, I mean, I think just bouncing ideas around is always really helpful. I don't know. I think it's something that I think about a lot. And so I'm really glad that we could touch on that and kind of like hear kind of what you both had to say. And I don't know. I think it's a really important topic because at some point in everyone's life, we're going to be, managing or coaching a team, even if it's like a little league team, or, you're going to be a parent or an uncle or a babysitter or something. You're going to have an opportunity to reign. I know that kind of like sounds like a really big title to be reigning when you're a babysitter, but like, I think it's something that everyone has to learn to, be open to have acceptance when you can't control somebody, because no one should be able to control anyone else, to take the ownership for what is your fault instead of someone else's, all those kind of things. So I don't know. I really liked everything that was said. Thanks for kind of diving into that with me.
We appreciate you bringing it up. All right. So the next one, there were 2 blog posts since our last podcast. So I gave Juliann the choice. She chose to talk about confesiones. It's going to be a really hard one to translate back into English. Sorry about that. But go in, talk about confessions. I give some of mine. What were some thoughts you had? Maybe something you agreed with or something you disagreed with that I stated?
I mean, I really liked what you were talking about. I liked the idea of, it was interesting to me to see how this is not just something that we practice in like our religion, but like a lot of religions practice it, and that they're, spiritually, there's kind of like could be some underlying reasons why this is like a really important thing to openly, confess something that you've done, to, admit that, I've done this and it was wrong. So I don't know. I really liked it. I thought it was something that like I looked back on a lot. It caused a lot of reflection in me to think about moments in my life where I was like, oh, I had to confess about that and that hurt. Like I did not want to do that. Or moments where I confessed and wasn't ready. I like said something, then I was like, I do not feel sorry for that right now. Probably should have waited till I have a little remorse. So I don't know. I think it brought up a lot of different thoughts and things in me. But more than anything, I'm kind of curious to know what it is. Like, why is it that, more than just our religion and multiple religions for a long time have been practicing this or encouraging their, members, followers, people to do it, you know?
For sure. Part of the imagery I was trying to create in this, especially based on this verse, by this you may know if a man repenteth of his sins, behold, he will confess them and forsake them. But there's a general idea that kind of pervades, especially the Eastern religions, about letting go, letting things, pass away, especially things you can't control. And I thought of this idea of like, we just like grab a sin and we just hold on to it and we hold on to it and it festers inside of us, and then it suddenly becomes like something you just like is on your mind all the time. But when you confess it and like you're ready to just be done with it, you're letting go, you're bringing balance back into your life, and that sin, whatever it might have been, is no longer controlling your thoughts, not controlling your mood, and you can be done with it if you really want to be.
Sorry. Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. I think that also, like, from my perspective, I have, I mean, we've all sinned, we've all done it, and I hate the concept of a favorite sin. I hate it when they say that. Personally, I'm not a big fan of that. But I had a sin that I was more drawn to than others, and it was one of those things where until I confessed it, it was always like my secret. Like nobody else knew. Why would anybody else know? It's not something that's publicly seen, and so it was always like I held it to myself. And so by not ever confessing, it was really easy to say, "This is the last time," or it's fine if I just commit it one more time. Is whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And once I went and talked with someone about it, and it didn't even have to be my bishop. It was just I talked with someone about it, and I said, "Look, dude, I'm struggling with this. This is my problem." And just that concept alone of somebody else knowing it was like the burden was gone in a way. Like I was still fighting the urge to sin, but the burden was gone. I didn't carry that alone anymore, and I was ready to move on. I was ready to move past it. So in my mind, that's one of those things is like Jesse was saying, letting it pass away. You say what your problem is, and it makes it easier to move on, in my opinion, from what I've seen.
Right.
I mean, I definitely think with like some things like that, like I just never liked to admit that I like would ever have done something really bad or, that you would have had to have confessed, for. And I think that that's another thing that there was always like when there was something looming over my head, I was like, I just need to talk to someone about this. It was kind of something that had like I'd given it permanence in my life. And I also wasn't really accepting myself or like allowing myself to be imperfect. It was kind of something that was like, oh, I'm just going to pretend like that didn't happen, kind of. Like, I'm just going to, let it fly under the radar. And it's kind of like a thorn in your side that'll stay there until you can kind of like become settled with it. But at least I don't know how it was for both of you, but I think that for me, whenever I committed like that type of a sin that you would have to confess, I just was so mad at myself. And I had a really hard time accepting that I had done it, accepting that I, you know, would have to tell someone else, accepting that I could be perfect in everyone's eyes because someone was going to have to know. I'd have to tell somebody eventually. Or, I guess I wouldn't have to. I could have just not told anyone. But, I think it's helpful for us to give ourselves the grace of saying, I'm human and it's okay. Like did this and I can get over it and I know it was wrong, and that alone I think is a big step, you know. But for me it always took a really hard time to like a really long time, and it was really hard to get to the point where I was like ready to tell someone else, you know.
Mhm.
And like sin kind of gives us this level of shame that we want to like hide, get in the shadows, and you know become like Gollum in a sense. You know, we have our little ring that's our sin, and it's ours, and no one can have it. But if the whole purpose is to become more like Christ, more like our Heavenly Father, we need to be brought into the light. Through Christ, we can overcome these things. You know, we need help. We can't do it by ourselves. And I loved your example, Zach, because it's not always just our religious leaders that need to be involved. You know, sometimes you need a friend, you need a parent, someone that you can trust and has your best interest in mind. And not everyone is necessarily ready to talk to a bishop, and I think, you know, that's okay. If you need to start with somebody you're a little more familiar with, then that's what you need to do. You know, you understand your emotions and everything better than everyone else does. And confessing can be as easy as, like one time I was probably, 5 or 6. I stole my neighbor's Pokemon cards. And I kept pretending like someone had traded them to me for my lame Pokemon cards. But like they were really nice ones, like a holographic Blastoise and stuff. You know, eventually it was like,
I love that.
we saw them at like the high school basketball game, and everyone was talking about how sad the kid was from whom I had stolen the cards. And I don't remember if anyone. I'm pretty sure like someone. Do you know what happened to these? I was like, I think for like 4 seconds I was like, no. Yes, it was me. I'm sorry. But then we were able to rectify the situation, got him the cards back, and I was able to apologize, and you feel better. You get better.
Yeah.
You learn from that. I have not stolen Pokemon cards since that moment.
How, man? I steal Pokemon cards on the weekly.
They're worth a lot more now, so you should.
No, that's true, and I really like that example. It's just it is what it is. You know, you need to find a way to move on, and telling someone can be a good part of that. And another part of it that I don't know how it works with everybody, but I feel like telling someone's good to do. But I think even more than that, it creates what is called an accountability partner. If you tell someone like, "Hey, I'm struggling with this," like I'll tell you my example right now. I'm having a struggle focusing on doing work. And so I told Julianne about it, and now part of my accountability is that I have a nice new chair that I just bought, and I can only sit in that chair if I'm doing work. And so it works that way where it's like, okay, I have a purpose when I sit down there, and it helps me focus. And so the goal of that is to have someone in who I confide that can help me be better. And so that's why it's similar with confession, is admitting a mistake, telling it to someone, getting that burden off your back, coming into the light, and then having someone there that can help you work forward, become better, focus on, where do we go from here? How do we quit the sin? How do we become better,
Yeah.
Like keep you in check. Like I know like there was this one thing that just kept sticking with me. Like I had confessed it, I thought I had worked through it, but I just kept feeling so bad about it. And actually before I served my mission, when I went in for like my pre-mission interview and was talking with my bishop, I just told him, I was like, I just cannot get this off my chest. Like I just feel so bad about this. Like I can't get over it. And so the thing that he said to me, like, he's obviously was like my advocate, and be, as confessing happened, he was able to help me move through it. But he said to me, he's like, you are forgiven. He looked in my eyes and said that, and I just was like, it hit me really hard. Like where someone, I think, just needed to help me realize that and feel that and know that like you're forgiven. And I remember I just started crying. I was like this has been hurting for so long, and like, and sometimes you just need that other person to look at the situation from an outside perspective. I think once I get deep into my own thoughts and fears and whatever, those things can become a lot bigger than they actually are. And to have somebody else kind of be like, you know what? You have suffered for this. You clearly have suffered for what you did, and you're forgiven, and this is let go. And you need to let it go too, for yourself.
Yeah, I've even heard it explained like if you're not able to forgive yourself, you're denying the power of the atonement. It's like,
Yeah.
are you a bigger judge than God in this situation? If he's willing to forgive you, then you need to be willing to forgive yourself.
That is a really powerful statement. I love that.
Yeah. And sometimes you can confess stuff that's, a little more trivial as well. Like I had
like stealing Pokemon cards.
Like stealing Pokemon.
Yeah.
Like the cringe. We all have these memories. Like you go back, you're like, why in the world would I have said that? That doesn't make any sense. I don't believe that, but I said it, and now it's affected this and this. Oh. Yeah. So yeah, I went through. I tried to get rid of some of the cringe from things I had done in this post as well. So
that was awesome.
Well,
as I was reading through that, I thought of so many moments where I was like, I really hope people don't just judge me off of that. Like I am, I think it's important that we give people grace, that we give them the ability to consistently change, because that's what people do, and I definitely had moments that made me think of. So I think we all have them. You're brave to go right out and put some of those out on the line, Jesse, and I appreciate it. I think it was really helpful to kind of bring some things up in me too that I was like, oh man, that was bad.
Yeah, I think I've talked with both of you about this. I know I've talked with Jesse about it. But the concept of apologizing, confessing your past mistakes to significant others that you had throughout high school and stuff. Like, this is one of those things that I know you and I have talked about this with Juliann, but Maddie Spencer and all the nice things that she sent me while I was on my mission. And I'm well aware of how much that cost, and I just, like, it never really lined up. I didn't ever really enjoy. I never really saw that as a long-term relationship. I definitely found you, and I was very happy there, and that's kind of where it was. But I feel like it's one of those things where it's like, should you go say you're sorry to people like that once it's been so long and it probably doesn't even matter to them anymore, but like it still matters to you a little bit that you feel like you might have hurt someone's feelings in that way, So I don't know. It's just one of those things that I think about.
Oh.
Hi, Buffy.
Isla would like to say a few words. Oh, just kidding.
I listen. Okay, next time.
Yeah, that's definitely fair. I've had people apologize to me well after they've been married. I was like, I personally had moved past that, and I didn't really think you were even mean when the event transpired. But if it makes you feel better, I'm glad I could be a part of it, and I hope other people share that perspective. Because sometimes maybe it was a pretty bitter moment, and they're like, "Why would you bring this up?" It's like, at least you're trying, in my opinion. Like your intentions were good intentions.
I think it's really good to make a habit of being comfortable, apologizing, saying you're sorry, because I think it helps us stay humble. I think when somebody gets to the point where they won't admit that they did anything wrong, or they won't admit it to anyone else, it kind of becomes this really like prideful air. Like you kind of have this feeling like, nope, no one can know I did this wrong. I can't admit it. I don't want to admit it. Like, or they justify, I never did anything wrong because this, that, or this, whatever. And I think it's really important for people to stay humble and I don't know. I feel like pain in my chest when I have to like admit I did something wrong. So like I mean I had to apologize to my sister not that long ago for something, and I just remember being like, ugh, I don't want to have this conversation. I know what I did was wrong, but like I just don't want to have this conversation, and then even after I had it, she didn't forgive me. And so I felt worse, I think, but like I know it was still important that she knew, and I know she'll get over it someday. And whether she ever like says to, that she forgives me or not, it's still, I'm just glad that I at least was able to admit, hey, I know that was wrong. I know you didn't deserve that. I know you didn't, whatever. So I think it's good to like keep us humble and keep us challenged too, to like really admit that we're not perfect. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
it definitely hurts. It can hurt though.
I for sure had to do that, learn that a little bit back when we used to play PUBG all the time. Be like, I'd make it seem like every decision I had made was perfect, and that was usually the case. But occasionally, there were times where I might have made a mistake, but had pushed the blame onto somebody else, particularly my little brother Bobby.
Bobby got a lot of blame.
And I worked on
but
trying
in
to
your defense, he
apologize.
was often on his own.
Yeah, that's fair. But I worked on
It goes both
apologizing,
ways. Cuts both ways.
making sure that our squad wasn't broken up because like I don't want to play with Jesse. He's mean. It's like, I try to be like, I recognize that I might have said some things that were unnecessary, and I will do better in the future. And I think that ended up working out.
Yeah.
There you go.
All right. Do you have any more thoughts on confession?
Nothing comes to mind right now. I mean, at least for me, I think I really loved this post. I thought it was something that, yeah, kind of brought up a lot of different feelings, brought up a lot of thoughts from the past, the cringe moments, definitely. Um, I don't know. I just really liked it. I liked how you dove into it, gave good examples and stuff. So,
Thank you.
I don't know.
So
As
we
far
have
as that goes,
Jules' approval. So everyone watching, go read it, go share it, tell your friends, tell your ex-lovers. They'll enjoy it.
yes.
I know one of mine liked the pup photo, so we're chilling. All right, we are going to go to what is considered possibly the greatest segment to ever be on any YouTube channel of all time, in my
Facts.
humble
No
opinion.
printer.
Diamonds in the rough. We are going to read this quote. We're going to discuss it, and then we are going to take a stab at who might have said or written this quote. And I'll read it off for you real quick. I have never met a man so ignorant that I couldn't learn something from him. And again.
I mean, I don't know if that's true.
Like a quiz for us? Oh, shoot.
I have never met a man so ignorant that I couldn't learn something from him. If you take faults with this quote, let's hear it. I like it.
No, I like it too. I'm just teasing.
I know you were talking about me.
I think it's a good quote. Yes, Jesse, I was clearly talking about you. No, I like it. I think that straight up, as like for what the quote is implying is true in and of itself. Like there are people that I don't thoroughly enjoy having conversations with, but I still learn something from them because they know something that I don't know. They've learned something in their life that I don't know. And, I think that's true of almost anyone I've ever talked to. And even if I think an added bonus to this is that you could extrapolate it and say, even if they are so ignorant, you can still learn from them by learning about what they're doing wrong,
Yeah.
Like you could use them as a bad example potentially, but I still think that straight up from the way it implies that I still think you can learn something from anyone. I think everyone's got some bit of knowledge that you don't have that you could grow from. So Jules, what do you think?
I think every person is extremely diverse and full of their own unique experiences, life events, everything. And I think even let's like say if someone was mute and they couldn't even talk, like you could still learn something from them. Even if it's something as small as like, wow, I really like the way that they wear their socks with those shoes or something like that's learning. Like, okay, I like that style. Or, you know, if it is someone that is ignorant or narcissistic or something, you learn, hey, I don't ever want to make people feel the way that they make me feel or the way that they talk down to so and so or whatever. Um, so I don't know. I mean, especially people that won't admit that they're wrong about something or that they don't want to see their own faults or aren't willing to budge that way. I totally agree. I think if you spend enough time with anyone, you're going to learn something.
Yeah. Kind of made me think of this other quote that I didn't really understand when I first read it, but it's from Zhuangzhou, I think is how you say it. The little child learns to speak, though it has no learned teachers, because it lives with those who know how to speak. So, like, shared experiences, you can learn from people who maybe aren't the brightest people, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can learn from the mason, you can learn from the musician, the artist, you can learn from the guy that paints on the outside of buildings, the inside of buildings, around the buildings, on the road. Mostly just painters, I guess.
Well, I mean, most of the painters in the Renaissance era were Renaissance men. They could do it all. So yes, painters
The
especially.
Renaissance painters were Renaissance men. Checks
Yes.
out. Checks out.
Checks out. Facts. You can't tell me it's a lie. Anyways.
I can't.
But yeah, no, I think that that's like an important fact to think about is like you will learn a lot by just listening to people because a lot of people know things. There's a quote from I can't remember where I saw it. I want to say it was Stoicism or Confucius. I can't remember, but it was to the same theory, same concept of this, where it said, basically that if you talk a lot, you aren't ever allowing yourself to learn. You learn the most when you listen to others, and so I think that's an important fact about this whole thing is that everyone has something that they've learned that you haven't, whether it was trivial knowledge that they learned as a kid or you know, more advanced things as they got into a field of study that they really enjoy. You know, everybody's got something that they've learned that you haven't learned, that if you listen, if you talk with them, if you give them their time to speak, you'll learn from them.
That's one thing I really enjoyed about our roommate situation. Like when you were living with us and Grant, it was like I would come home with my random etymology facts or political facts, and then you guys would turn around and give me some computer science knowledge or some physics knowledge and go around in circles just talking about it. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, it was a good time. It really was.
Who do you think might have birthed this quote?
Say it again. I like how you use birth. Sorry.
I have never met a man so ignorant that I couldn't learn something from him.
I'm going to go with like Napoleon Bonaparte. No, he didn't care about people like that. Alexander the Great, maybe. He's a pretty good leader.
My guess is Epictetus.
The great Stoic philosopher.
Yes.
So both Greek people then.
Yes.
Unfortunately, you are both incorrect.
Dang. I thought you were going to say right.
Nope. This man is Italian and known for using a big telescope. Maybe not a big one, but a telescope.
Galileo.
Galileo Galilei. He's the one who said this quote. It's interesting because
It's a good quote.
He was someone that had to, or was basically, they tried to force him to deny actual knowledge that he had.
They did not like the fact that he thought the sun was the center.
Yeah. Because they took him into the Inquisition and he like denied stuff, but at the end he was like, and yet it moves. And then.
And yet it
Yep.
Yeah. Pretty baller
Gallo
move.
Galli. Yep. He's a good dude.
You know, again, not someone from our faith. Not someone I've ever met in this lifetime. Had some good stuff to say. I believe him. I know his words are true. And if you follow these precepts, you will live a better life. Guaranteed.
Mm-hmm.
As far as closing thoughts this time around, let's kind of circle back around. Juliann, what's something that you feel like was a good takeaway, something actionable that you can do because of what we talked about today?
I would probably say the first thing that comes to my mind is about reigning with righteousness. I think it's just important to give people space to be who they are and give them your love and your acceptance and step in when you need to. And so I think that's something that I can do better with. An actionable takeaway would just be more understanding of people and supportive, and also keep working on developing that concept of reigning with righteousness, because I want to keep thinking about it. I think that'll be something that'll be, developing as I go forward. So
We can talk about it the next time we have a bachelorette night.
yes.
Our quarantine ends tomorrow.
Perfect. So we have to catch up on all the episodes tomorrow.
Have you not watched any of them? Sorry, this is not a topic for right now. Let's keep going.
I mean, it's all about you guys. I do it for you.
Fair.
What are some actionable takeaways, Zachary?
I think the actionable takeaway I'm going to go with for this time around would be from the diamond in the rough. I like to think that I am an inquisitive person that likes to listen to people, but I think I'm going to try a little bit harder to not rant when I'm talking with people, because I'll find myself like for the first bit of a conversation it'll be a pretty good back and forth, and then I'll let them keep going, and then after a while I have something to say and I just go off. And so I think I'm going to try and like pull that back a little bit, and listen to people a little bit more. I think that's the actionable takeaway that I can use personally in my life, and I think anybody would benefit from listening to people more than they talk themselves.
Yeah. I think my actionable takeaway builds on that, learning from other people, but also accepting that it's okay to ask for help when you need it, and recognizing that you can't do everything by yourself. We're all part of a giant team, and we're lucky enough that we have access to people not only locally, but via the internet and telephones. You can go across the world. So with that being said, the most important actual takeaway every week, Zachary, has to be eat
More.
chicken.
Yeah.
Let us know how you feel like in the comments. All 10 of you so far that are making it to this part of the video. We will reward
Tell us
you.
what your favorite combo meal is at Chick-fil-A. We'll try it out next week on Chick-fil-A's dime.
Exactly. So let us know what that is. We are going to try every single one. And we'll take pictures to prove it and put it in the comments, potentially. And next week, we are planning on having a giveaway since we hit our 1,000 visitors to the website. The gift card is to be determined. It'll be in the $20 to $25 range. and will likely be through the Instagram page and might involve the YouTube page as well. So look out for that and take it easy.